I'm going to read again some excerpts of chapter number 2, The Effect of the Lockdowns. My writing career is the effect of the lockdowns. In these last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, I came to learn more about myself than I had known in my whole life. I dyed my hair blonde since I was 15, so when the pandemic hit and hair salons were closed for 16 weeks, I did not recognize myself in the mirror. I remember that 6 weeks into the into oh sorry. I remember that 6 weeks into the first lockdown, the sales of hair color products skyrocketed, and I realized I did not know what my real natural hair color was. I did a wash with a dark ash brown tone just to realize there was not a blonde hair on my head. Worst, I realized that actually my white hairs, canas in Spanish, were really present, and they were here to stay. This is a very superficial note, as the pandemic was a real catastrophe, a human catastrophe that touched every human being in the planet. The solitude, distress, anguish, and unbearable anticipation of not knowing what to expect during those first weeks of the lockdown hurt deeply. All over the world, we were seeing hundreds of cases of sick people and lives lost to an invisible enemy. There were so many questions with no answers that turned into more questions with no answers. I will never forget the images of hospitals in Italy and Spain, those first weeks of March of 2020. I watched a British newscast on television where the Spanish health minister acknowledged their incapacity to protect their elderly. This same incapacity was witnessed in the lives lost in retirement residences in Canada. I'm not trying to downplay all the dimensions of this great crisis. I am just putting together some scattered memories of those first weeks. I was by myself at home. I was traveling when the lockdown started and had to come back when the Prime Minister called Canadians to come back home because the borders with the USA would be closed. Flying inside an almost empty airplane felt surreal. I was going to Florida on a mission with a mask, gloves, and a coat that I took off and stored in a plastic garbage bag before getting into my brother's car. It was insane flying back to Canada in full PPE, that's how we call the personal protection equipment, and walking through an airport that looked more like a ghost city. They sent me on a direct flight to Toronto, and when I arrived, I locked myself in my apartment for 2 weeks, isolated. I had never before been completely alone in my whole life. That was the start of my self-discovery and self-restoring journey. I was diagnosed as a bipolar patient in July 2005 after I suffered a manic episode that landed me in the psychiatric ward of the Oakville Trafalgar Hospital. It was the result of a postpartum depression after the birth of my third child. I was lost and unsure of what had happened. It was triggered by a difficult situation. I was devastated. I was saved and taken care of by the love and the goodness of my siblings. Heroically and unexpectedly for me, they drove, flew, and arrived at the hospital looking for me. I had a surreal experience. It was more like an out-of-body experience. I was sedated in the emergency room on an evening and woke up days later in a hospital room, dressed in a white gown and sleeping in a two-bedroom side-by-side with an elderly lady. My life was never the same after that experience. It was hurtful, and I did not understand what had happened. I was not myself. Worst, I had 3 children, one of them a 4-month-old baby that I was breastfeeding, and suddenly I did not know where they were. Many years went by before I could talk about it and come to terms with my own experience. It was a real nightmare, or in other words, a life-changing experience. The experience was a curved ball that life threw at me, but I was willing to receive the curved ball and hit it back. Life does not always happen as we expect. So many things are out of our sight and out of our control. No matter our disposition to learn and try to understand, there is so much we can't unravel. I needed time to understand the consequences of the bipolar 2 diagnosis on my life. I hope with this you understand part of the pain that comes with being diagnosed, part of the fear and how scared we can be when someone tells us we're something that we didn't know we were, or we didn't expect we were, or we didn't want to be. But at the end, I can tell you after years and years of experience, it is up to us to really feel free to talk about our experiences if we want to, but it's up to us to look for our own mental health. My mental health, I was told once, depends only on me. No one can take care of you as you can take care of yourself. And it is so important to have a support group, family, friends, colleagues, anybody that knows you will be able to help you, only if you are open to receive that help. So let's keep opening the conversation, and I hope I can read more parts of my book, and you can get to know what I mean by I am tripolar directly from me. It's wonderful to have this opportunity. It was scary, but the more I try to do it, the easier it becomes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Just let me know if you liked it, and let's keep talking about mental health together.